it's easy to lose the joy when you're constantly being told what to do, because I don't know how you are, Chris. I'm not a big fan of being told what to do all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Airdrie Inside. I am your host, Chris Glass, and I am here at Rival Axe. Joni from Rival Axe has graciously allowed us our space again. This facility is beautiful, and you should come check it out. They have axe throwing, they've got billiards, they've got great drinks, and most of the time, they've got great live music. So check out Rival Axe here in Airdrie. My guest today is the legendary Bob Wilkie. Bob, welcome to the show.
Yeah, excited to be here, Chris. And you know what? This is a great place. So if you haven't checked it out, it really is cool.
Well, I'm sure Joni's going to appreciate the plug here. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I had the ability to see you speak at the 100 Men Who Give a Damn here in Airdrie, and I was very moved by your story, and I was hoping to expand on it and tell a little bit long version of it. So I'm really glad you're here today. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, excited to be here. You know, long history in Airdrie too, thinking about it. And I know that you're all about Airdrie people. I've watched this town grow up, you know, being a native Calgarian.
Right.
And, you know, so many times spoken with Chamber of Commerce, done work with some of the local companies, the local hockey teams, you know, just it's such a great community. So I'm really thrilled to be here.
Well, and the plug for Airdrie, we went from 26,000 people when I first moved here to the 95,000 that we're here now. We are a great growing community, and it's not just that place north of Calgary anymore. So
it's nice to see it carving out its own identity. And, you know, my experiences recently, especially with the 100 Men, you know, just a community of care.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of what Calgary used to be growing up, that unfortunately you lose anytime anything gets bigger like that.
Right.
You know, you're going to lose that feel. And it's nice to kind of feel it in Airdrie.
Yeah, it's good to see. And I'm so glad to have you on to talk about some of the projects you're working on, and give a little bit of story about your history and the journey that you've taken. So you have a movie coming up called Sideways. It's going to be premiering here in the city, not premiering, but it's going to be screened here in the city. You have a great organization with I Got Mind. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you motivated to start this. So why don't we go back to your roots here?
Yeah. You know, how I Got Mind started was through the healing process.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been a risk taker in my life, and, you know, putting myself out there, I was always willing to do that to achieve the things that I thought I could achieve.
Right.
And so as a young athlete, you know, like every Canadian boy, I wanted to be a professional hockey player. And, you know, went through that whole gamut and a lot of scarring, a lot of damage, a lot of wounds that really, really messed me up and took me to a place that I never thought I would be, Chris, you know, right. To the lowest, darkest points that, you know, I spent so much time just wondering, like, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah.
Because this was not me, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And, you know, the healing process began probably 1997. Had really struggled after an injury. Doctors told me I shouldn't play anymore. My career was done. My identity was gone.
Right.
And yeah, some of the stuff that was going on for me personally, you know, just not thinking that I really wanted to be here anymore.
Yeah.
Was, again, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah.
You go from everything so good to all of a sudden you feel like you have nothing and there's no value in you anymore. And so I started down that journey of healing, and I started to learn little bits and pieces, and it was really cool because all of a sudden I knew things now. And I could get through some of the stuff before that had kind of kept me paralyzed a little bit. And I was coaching young men at the time. This was around 2006. So 6 years of really intense, dedicated learning, improvements, feeling good, was a father of two now. You know, life was starting to make sense again. It was pretty cool. And then I was coaching these young men, and I started to teach them some of the things that I was learning. And I could see the light bulbs going on because they were in that place in life where they had to make decisions, and, you know, whether they were liked by their peer groups and all these different things that I had struggled with. And I started to teach them, you know, different things of how you could do those. And it really amplified their game, how they felt about themselves. They were achieving things. They were going on to great things. And I knew that I was kind of onto something. And that's when I Got Mine started. So developed some programming around how you teach young people the mental and emotional side of achieving. and all the demands. And so it's just been a wonderful 20-year journey ever since that.
Now, we talked a little bit off camera about how coaching and the game has changed, and you really identified 4 specific kind of changes over the last 20 years, and mental health is such a big part of it. And that safety, that institutional safety of your team, that was really missing, I think, when you grew up, and definitely when I grew up coming up in sports until I got to high school, where I had a pretty transformational coach who kind of taught me that safety was such a big part of it. Let's talk about your junior hockey involvement and going back a little bit on what that environment was like.
Yeah, the environment probably from the age of 12 was quite toxic.
Yeah.
Highly competitive, and anytime we're in competitive mode as human beings,
of course, it's
me or you, Chris. I love you like a brother, but
I'll slit your throat.
If somebody's got to win, it's going to be me. And, not knowing how to navigate that, very much hockey was a community for me. Being around my teammates, I loved it. The challenge, I loved it. The demands and the expectations as they started to show up, didn't love those. It got real hard, real confusing. You get into quadrant hockey at 13, 14, so you're having some success. You're getting notified. People are kind of recognizing, hey, this kid's got some talent and ability. And again, very unhealthy cultures, because it was so super competitive. So, and we were winning to boot. I was learning how to win, which was really good for me. But it also showed me what people do to win. There's that phrase, win at all costs.
Yeah.
And that was a part of our cultures, unfortunately, where we would, sacrifice each other a little bit from time to time. Coaches definitely putting way too much pressure on young people who had no idea how to perform at that level. So it became really hard to manage. And, 3, 4, 5 years getting into junior hockey at 16 years old, I was still learning, but I was expected to know all this stuff. And so it was really frustrating because it wasn't a culture of education, patience, support until you get it right. It was demands, threatening, consequences that didn't make any sense.
That manipulation.
Yeah. So, you're growing up in a culture where there's a lot of mixed messages going on. One person is saying this, the other person is saying that, but then you don't see any of it going on. So it's like, how the hell do I function in this? So, developed a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms to live in these toxic cultures that were definitely the beginning of the end for me.
Now, and you played at a pretty iconic WHL team with the Swift Current Broncos, a very rich history. And I mean, the obvious situation in with the bus crash, and even the coach at the time with Graham James being the coach. Can you walk me through that experience? Because I think it's important to get that in order to tell the rest of the story. Yeah. I don't want to get too hung up on that side of it.
But it was an interesting time. Like, it really is a fascinating part of my story. 17 years old, just came off a great year with the Calgary Wranglers, was ranked to go in the first round of the NHL draft the next year. So super excited. Played for Team Canada that summer. Everything was going in the right direction. So I start the season in Calgary, think everything's great. After one game, I get traded to Swift Current, and I was devastated. I had never had that experience before. And it was just a really difficult time because I was living at home, you know what I mean? I had all my friends, and now what does this mean?
You have this whole support structure
absolutely.
Here in Calgary.
And it was really interesting because we were playing Swift that night when I got traded. So one of the deals was I couldn't play that night. They didn't want me playing against them after they just traded me because they knew that I would definitely react to that. So I had to sit and I remember meeting Graham James for the first time. And you know, you meet a lot of people in your life, Chris, especially when you put yourself out there. And this was one individual that I've never had this happen before or since, where my stomach flipped.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that was. And it really got my attention and was tough. You know, because we took the night and we went home and we talked about, okay, what's the future look like? Like, I don't want to go, but I couldn't not go. You know, I'm not close to my dream. So, but that in the back of my mind, always wondering about Graham James. And so I left. I moved to Swift. So fortunate to get the Billet family that I did. You know, Billets can be our savior,
right? For
sure. And that Billet family was mine. But as things progressed, he revealed himself to me as another very unsafe individual. I couldn't pinpoint what it was, But I knew that there was something different about him. And so it was tough because I knew that I had to put myself out there to get drafted and do really well. But I also didn't feel safe with this individual to the point where I felt comfortable being me. And so it created a lot more conflict for me, which really made me struggle. Being away from home, homesickness. So that first half of being traded was really difficult. And then, came back from Christmas. Joe Sakic was there. He was having a good year. I was having a decent year. Ryan McGill, Peter Soberlak. So there was 4 of us that were in the first 2 rounds of the conversation. Yeah. So we had a really talented opportunity. Some of the older guys, Chris Mantica was doing well, Scotty Kruger, Trent Cressy. So we had things moving. We were super excited to come back. And then December 30th, 1986, 5 minutes out of Swift, doing 50 kilometers an hour, driving real slow. You guys get the roads out here where it's windswept and shitty, and just caught an ice patch, and that changed everybody's life forever.
I couldn't imagine. One of our first guests on the show, about 10 guests in, was Ryan Straczynski from Humboldt. And it's ironic that today's Green Shirt Day in honor of that situation. But I was always amazed when I talked to Ryan about how he just kept looking forward and just kept moving forward. What was moving forward for those people who were going through that situation? Like, how, especially with a leader and a coach that you didn't trust and that you had to build walls to protect yourself against.
Yeah, it was difficult moving forward. A lot of us really struggled with it, because we were just wired differently, where those relationships were important to us. And when we didn't have that, it caused a lot of challenges. Seeing what we saw messed a lot of us up, knowing that there was the void. Those guys weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
Just not things you're prepared for, right? You don't deal with that kind of grief and loss
at that age.
No, especially playing hockey, right? Like you're pretty shielded from a lot of stuff. And so it was a real slap in the face. And we didn't move forward as well as we could have. We still made playoffs, which is crazy to even think about.
Yeah.
Because a couple players quit too, so we not only lost the 4 who were in the accident, but we lost another 3 that just said, that's enough for me.
Yeah,
like they just
had enough.
Yeah, they couldn't deal with it. How do you deal with that, right?
Yeah.
So together was, and that's one of the things that we talk about at Sideways, in the screenings after, where we have a fireside chat, and we talk about the importance of community, because it was how we bonded together after that, the time that we spent, the tears that we shed, the silent conversations that we had with each other around what we were feeling and suffering with. It just, it allowed us to keep moving forward. And we all got drafted. I didn't get drafted where I was originally supposed to, but still drafted. And it was hard. I just didn't give a shit anymore, Chris, to be honest.
Yeah.
That day was supposed to be the happiest, but it sure wasn't.
And then you go to the NHL. Like you said, this was supposed to be your dream. This was supposed to be everything you wanted it to be, and it's not. Walk me through what that experience is like. Because that takes it to a whole nother level when it comes to pressure and temptation and consequences, being sheltered. Like, walk me through that. Yeah,
the last year in Swift there was a pretty good year. We had really good success. I think we only lost 14 games all year. We still have records in the league today because we were that good.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, won the Memorial Cup. And I think finishing our junior career and our time in Swift Current that way, we had some pretty good feelings about what our futures held for us. So it was exciting going to be a pro. It's like, okay, maybe. But yeah, it's a different world. You're completely on your own. There's no billet family. You have to find your own place. You have to buy your own dishes and pots and pans, and right in a foreign country.
Yeah.
I remember trying to get my social insurance card and that just being a nightmare, right? How do I get paid? So, I mean, dealing with that adjustment into being an adult now, and then still trying to perform at that highest level was a huge challenge, big learning curve. I failed way more than I succeeded my first year pro. And that was painful because up until that point, I had made every team that I wanted to make. And so the only team that I didn't make was the Detroit Red Wings in my first try.
Wow.
And so that was devastating to me. I work with a lot of young athletes. If a kid gets cut from AAA, right, they're devastated. I just never had that experience until it was the pinnacle. So it was tough. I didn't communicate well. I didn't let people know where I was at. I was still struggling quite a bit with everything that I had gone through with the trauma and Swift Current. So it was a battle. The first year as a professional made me question whether I was going to continue down this road.
When did you start to realize that you were dealing with a problem bigger than just hockey? What point did that start creeping in?
Yeah, I think immediately after the accident.
Yeah.
Because it was such a foreign vibration, the feelings that I was having, I had never experienced before. Like I'd lost my grandpa when I was 14 and that was sad.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like this.
You kind of expect to, at some point, you're preparing for that at some point.
100%. But the way it happened, I think that's the thing that people don't understand about trauma, right? The effect it can have, and we can downplay it quite a bit. But listen, if it causes anything like it caused for me, it's trauma. People always say when we tell our story at Sideways and speaking engagements, it's like, oh, mine isn't as bad as yours. No. If it felt like I described, then it's the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's, one thing we have to understand is that trauma is something that we all go through in life. And if you don't understand what you've experienced and most importantly, what you need to do to heal yourself, it can last a lifetime.
I think sometimes with trauma, there's this weird one-upmanship that goes on. Like, oh, that was bad, but you should have heard what I went through.
Right.
And in reality, trauma is unique to you.
Yeah. It's mine.
And nobody else gets to own your trauma.
I remember being so upset with some of my teammates afterwards because they acted like nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. Here I am sulking around, always sad, and they're all happy and laughing. I'm just like, how the hell can you be happy?
How can you process it?
How are you not acting like me? And that really showed me how people interpret trauma differently.
Yeah. So as your NHL career wraps up, and as you look to move on to the next stage of your life, that must have been a very eye-opening moment for you as well to try to figure out what comes next. What was that like? It
was really hard. I had a couple of guys that mentored me that were really good, and they said, it's going to be real difficult when you stop, right? Because you completely lose everything. You'll know what I mean by how many phone calls you get a week after you retire. And that was totally true. It's all of a sudden like you don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And that was always the hard part about being a professional is you always wondered if people were really your friends and being friendly with you because of who you were or because of what you are.
Yeah.
And it showed me that it was mostly because of what I was. So it was very lonely.
Right.
And then, I didn't finish high school because I got drafted and just.
Yeah, you didn't need
why
to.
would I?
Yeah, of course.
So now what do I do? Right. I don't even how do these skills even translate? I'm great on the power play, but how many power play opportunities am I going to find out there in the professional world? None. So it was a real hard process. I was bartending, my mom was a caterer growing up, so I knew how to bartend. That paid the bills. But it really was a wasteland, Moses wandering around the desert for 40 years trying to figure out what the hell to do next. And that was a big part of it. That was a real struggle that a lot of people don't understand, right? Transition is hard.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize that you're in transition and always try and have something to move you forward. So it was, I needed to heal myself. So that was the thing that really, it's like, okay, you can't figure out what you're going to do or be next. Why don't you fix yourself? Right. And maybe learn why you ended up feeling like that. And so that helped me through that transition a lot because I started to get more confident, realize I did have talents and abilities that could have. Listen, I had experiences that nobody on the planet's going to have. Right. I was a part of several championship teams. I was one of the best players in the world at 18 years old.
Like you played for Team Canada.
Right. And so starting to think of myself in that way gave me a renewed confidence that, hey, let's put ourselves out there and see what happens.
I'm always blown away. Like resiliency is a word that I don't think a lot of people understand, but I've seen it through these interviews and I've seen it through conversations that I've had with people who have faced crazy odds and then have done something great with that, with an environment that might kill a normal person. I would put you in that category as somebody who's done great things coming from tragedy and trauma. When did you decide that you wanted to do more than just survive and just move forward? When did you decide that you were going to try to help?
I think the moment was when I realized what I had learned to help me heal could help others. And I mean, that was a big part of my life growing up. I wanted everybody to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted everybody to get along. And when I saw what I had learned could have that kind of impact on groups and people, that's when I really felt it for the first time. And it was a powerful thing. Not something I thought I'd ever do, Chris.
Yeah.
But had the awareness to pay attention to what was going on around me. And when I saw those results and I got that feedback, it was like, okay, I'm onto something here. And that really motivated me to, I want to give back and help others.
And that led to I Got Mind.
Yeah.
So walk me through I Got Mind and what's it about?
So cool. What a great story this is. So I'm down in the States. I'm writing some programs and teaching these young athletes, having some really good success. And I'm hungry to learn. Like, I'm just voracious. Like, I need to learn as much as I can. And so I was introduced. My mom actually sent me the movie The Secret. Yes. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it totally resonated with me because I had always been the creator of my life. I had always, when I wanted something, I could go and get it, right? You set goals so I'm watching The Secret and I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. But there was one guy in there in particular, his name was Bob Proctor. And every time Bob came on the screen, it's like he had a megaphone in my ear. Everybody else was like you and I talking. But when Bob came on, he was a megaphone in my ear. So I'm like, okay, I got to find out who this guy is. And I did some research, and he has a company called Life Success. He had a company. He passed away a couple of years ago. But they did training. And I thought, this is awesome. One of the dads had told me after a session with the young guys, whatever you need, I totally believe in what you're doing. So I set up a meeting with him. I went and sat in his office and I said, John, his name was John Rickards. He owned an auto dealership, Bobby Rahal. And I said, this is what I want to do. And I showed him all the brochures and everything. I said, the problem I have is it's $20,000 for me to go and do it. And he opened his desk and he took out his checkbook and he wrote a check for $20,000. And that's, so I Got Mind came from putting myself out there, this is what I want to do. And then going and asking for help.
Yeah.
And I spent time with Bob a couple of years. He was my mentor, just fantastic, and taught me and made me confident in my story and who I was and what I had overcome, that I could go and share that learning with other people. And it's been a godsend.
That's fantastic. Again, like I said, hearing stories of rejuvenation is just amazing, right? Because everybody can start.
Some days it's hard to believe it's my story.
Yeah. And now let's talk about Sideways. Mm-hmm. What a great project.
2006, I brought that group of young men that I was working with, we brought them up to the Max tournament. I had the editor of the Hockey News at that time was Brian Costello. Brian was the reporter that was on the bus with us. I said, hey, we got a sponsor, would like you to write an article for the Hockey News. It's such a great thing. And he's like, it's a great idea. Why don't you write it?
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll write it. And so I wrote this article. I got a phone call about 2 weeks after it came out. And it was a lady who was behind the bus when it went off the road. And she said, I've not talked to anybody in 20 years. I've never told anybody this, but I read your article in the Hockey News and I just wanted to reach out and talk with you. And so Lisa Culp and I hit it off. We talked for hours, continuously. Let's talk tomorrow night. And we said, you know what? Let's write a book about this. And so Lisa was really the catalyst for the whole book. She did all the research, grabbed all the newspaper articles from Swift for those 3 years, and then came down to Pennsylvania. She lived in Ontario, drove down to Pennsylvania, and we wrote this book in a weekend. Just talking about all the different things. And so it just flowed out of me, this whole story from start to finish of the Memorial Cup, the bus accident to Memorial Cup. And it took about 5 years to get it published. So we were excited and devastated and excited and and all of a sudden this publisher comes out, Dunder and Publishing, and they said, yeah, we'll take it. And so we were so happy. And it was a week after that Shane Putzlacher, who did the documentary, he wanted to make it into a movie. So we're really excited about this, 2006 to 2014, the book finally comes out. Now Shane wants to make it into a movie, and he just couldn't get the pieces in place to make the movie. Pandemic hit, changes everything. So he said, you know what? I'm tired of beating my head against a brick wall here. Why don't we create a documentary? And I said, well, what does that mean? And he says, well, it's going to be about you. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really interested in that. He said, no. And he laid out the whole storyline and how he wanted to do it. And he said, but we want you to be one of the main things in there. I thought, you know what? Listen, Chris, the world is a difficult place, right? We're putting ourselves out there constantly for people to critique us when we do this, right?
Absolutely.
And I thought, do I really need that kind of anguish in my life at this point? You know what I mean? I'm 53 years old. Life's pretty good. Do I need to put myself out there? And I finally decided that, you know what, because I had seen so many people react to the vulnerability of us telling our story, why not? So the last 3 years, we've been putting this documentary together, and it's just been a fantastic experience. Writing a book is not something I would do. Making a documentary is not something I would. And this thing just turned out brilliantly. Lori Kufner, who's a local resident here in Airdrie, was the director, and she just did a brilliant job of pulling all of the different characters of this story together. And the impact it's had, Chris, like you haven't seen it yet.
No.
Right? And I know Britton has seen it. It changes you.
I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, it completely changes you. So we've shown it 14 times across Canada, and every response has been overwhelming. So it's something that we want to continue because it does enhance the wellness and the awareness in the communities that watch it.
Yeah. Again, we're going to, once we have a date here in Airdrie, we're going to put it in the show notes. We're going to make sure that all of our viewers can get out to see it. And I will definitely be there to see it. Let's shift a little bit of focus to talk about today. And, we had a bit of a conversation off camera about how sports and the game has changed. What's your critique on sports today? Hockey, organized sports in general, and where do you think we are and where do you think we need to go?
Yeah, it's interesting. 20 years doing this work, you see a lot of changes. We were talking about, from 2008 to today, we've seen 4 significant differences in the kids just because of the difference in generations, right? Technology, the way of the world, the pandemic,
parenting.
Everything has changed significantly. So we've never seen that in our lifetime, right? You and I growing up, there was 1. All of a sudden now there's 4 in a relatively short period of time. So it's created there's been so much overcorrecting, right? A lot of the values that coaches had back in the day were really good. You work hard, you treat people with respect, right? You're accountable for your stuff. They just didn't necessarily do it in a way that made us feel safe.
Yeah.
Right? And so what we see in the work that we do, because we work with lots of different sports, is that there's cultural problems everywhere. Just about every sport that we've seen is unhealthy. Not because people are trying to make it that way, but again, because of the overcorrection.
Yeah.
The parents aren't allowing coaches to create accountability in their athletes. The athletes have a sense of entitlement they've never had before, where they don't have to listen to you if they don't like your opinion, right? And then mom and dad swoop in and change everything, and coaches don't want to talk to parents, and parents don't like coaches, and then the board's trying to. So there's all these issues that really, Chris, I don't think are sport related.
Yeah.
They're a real reflection of our society as a whole. And hockey gets a bad rap because what Hockey Canada's been through, every time a hazing issue comes out in whatever sport, there's always that. But we've got such a big issue with just how we treat each other, because that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day is, are we treating each other in the way that we want to be treated? And we just don't see that enough. And so that bleeds into our sports, which makes it really traumatizing for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, I've always thought sport has pushed back against some of that change, right? Like it's kind of the last place, like in my world in football, if you miss your block, you get immediate feedback from the guy who kills your running back that you messed up. And there's an accountability that's not there in the real life. And then you have the pressures from the outside world saying, actually, that's okay. It's okay to fail there. And you're like, no, I just got him killed, and it's always been a counterpunch to that. And a lot of times an overcorrection takes place there too. What changes would you like to see in the game?
I'd like to see everybody enjoy what they're doing more.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough joy in the sports. It's gotten so super competitive that we're isolating our athletes into one sport at 9 years old.
Yeah.
When soccer's awesome. Baseball's great, right?
Yeah.
Swimming is fantastic.
Badminton.
Golf, all these other things that we can do that develop us more and more as an athlete. You can't say that people are athletes today. They're hockey players or they're football players.
Yeah, it becomes hyper specialized at a very young age.
Athletes are people that can do a lot of good things, right? They would say, oh, he's a natural athlete. No, he works hard to be good at all the different things that he's doing. There's no natural about it. It's that passion. But when we don't get introduced to those other things in those other communities as well, we're very singularly focused, and that really limits the opportunities that we may have.
So looking at getting back to the joy in the game, looking to kind of wait until older years to specialize is something you'd like to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to be. I think John Stevens, he's been an NHL head coach. John is a friend of mine. He was telling me a story when he was the coach of the LA Kings. They were at training camp, and he said, we're going to do something different. We're just going to go play football in the field. Well, he comes back. He said, you wouldn't believe it. We're throwing the football around, and this one kid busts his nose because he's never learned how to catch a football. Right? The amount of kids today that we have fun and we explore when we do our sessions. How many of you know how to ride a bike? You wouldn't believe how many kids don't know how to ride a bike.
That's crazy.
Right? But they know how to skate, and boy, can they shoot.
Yeah.
And boy, can they hit the ball. You know what I mean? But they can't do all the other things. And I think it's because we take the joy out of it. Some of our best times growing up, Chris, you think about it, was the stuff we were doing in the playgrounds with no parents around.
Yeah.
When do these kids get free time today?
Yeah.
To just be kids and just to figure that stuff out on their own. They don't anymore. Everything is so structured. So it's easy to lose the joy when you're constantly being told what to do, because I don't know how you are, Chris. I'm not a big fan of being told what to do all the time.
No, and I find, kids can love a sport. Like, obviously they're attracted to one sport or another because there's a passion and a love for it. And I find, you could go all day hating school. You might not come from the best background, so maybe your morning doesn't start all that great. Your day sucks, and then you get to the football field, or you get to the hockey rink. There's a duty for those coaches to make that the best part of their day, because it could be the only thing that kid wants to do for that whole day. Yeah. So I share your sentiment about getting back to the joy of the games that are being played and bringing fun back to sport. I worry sometimes that money is really driving us to a place that isn't good. Money,
status.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of the stuff that people think they want. I'm here to tell you, when you have it, it's not as great as you think. Because a lot of times you do the wrong things to get there.
Yeah.
And it just, it's not as sweet as you think it's going to be. You talked about duty, and it was one of the things we talked about. We showed this on Parliament Hill. And it was great because we got to talk with a bunch of MPs who are in charge of us.
Yeah.
And the whole theme of the talk was duty of care. And you think about, when I'm a coach of young people, I have a responsibility to provide duty of care. And what does that mean? It's creating a safe environment. It's creating a respectful environment where people have the opportunity to grow, to learn, to thrive, to embrace failure. But we don't necessarily think about it that way. And that's the parents' involvement. Duty of care is keeping it safe on the ride home, right? Because that's a lot when we compete. And, a lot of athletes really are fearful of the ride home, and because they know it's coming. And
the critique is worse there.
And I think that's why we lose the joy, is because we lose a healthy perspective on what sport is meant to be.
I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's teaching. When you talk about the bullhorn, when I hear him talk, and one of the things he always says is leadership isn't being in charge; it's taking care of those in your charge. So I would like to see to get back to those days. I have a question that keeps popping into my head while you talk. Do you still play hockey?
Twice a week. Sorry, I found a group. I didn't for a long time.
Yeah.
I tried to play men's league. When they found out who I wasn't healthy competition. They were out to kind of
either
show me.
Yeah.
I had a guy, he was a big guy and he couldn't skate real well. And he kind of threw me into the boards and made a bunch of smart ass little comments. And I thought, you know what? This is not the game.
This isn't healthy.
So I hung him up for a while, but I had some friends reach out to me that I grew up with, and they said, we got a really good group. We think you'd like it. They're called the 7HLers. Just a fantastic group of guys. They've been skating together for 30 years. We have 4 sets of jerseys. We have a commissioner that makes the teams. We play 3-game series, and it's the best, most fun hockey I've ever played in my life.
So the joy's back.
I found the joy again. Yeah.
I'm really excited to hear that. Bob, this has been my honor and my pleasure to have you on the show. I want to give you a chance to tell everybody where we can find out more information about the various things you have on the go.
Yeah, igotmine.ca is our website. If we have an event for a screening of the Sideways documentary, you can find it there. It's usually on the homepage. Lots of information. There's so many different groups that we've been fortunate to work with. We have a lot of youth sports programs, all different modalities. We work with coaches, athletes, parents. So we've got all that. We've done work in the school systems with teachers and with athletes and students just in general. And we do a lot of corporate work as well. So, there's lots of different resources there. You can join our community. We're really proud of the community that we built recently. It's just all things wellness. We've done a series lately because a lot of people are saying that, I'm dealing with aging parents and I don't know how to deal with it. So we created a Becoming a Caregiver series. We have the Nutrition Collective teaching all things nutrition, just those types of things, trying to create a place out there in this crazy messed up world where you can come and just kind of be and learn and figure out things on your own.
Well, like I said, Bob, this has been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Chris.
much for coming on the show. And I can't wait to see Sideways in person.
Been great.
Yeah. And thank you again.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
And thank you for being with us here on Airdrie Inside. We're going to be back with more great episodes coming up shortly.
Quick update. I just got the text from Bob. The Sideways documentary Airdrie Mental Health fundraiser is set for June 15th at 7 p.m. The doors open at 6:30. And it's at Venue Church, which is 2926 Kingsview Boulevard, Southeast. They've collaborated with the Airdrie Sports Council, and you can check out the Sideways documentary that night, June 15th. Link to the tickets below.